record. Hello, my name is Dr. Anita Knight-Coonley, and I am here with an emerging scholar, Miss Samantha Bean. And this is a sample from our Student Research Conference presentation, where Sam is going to be sharing her research proposal from a research course. And there's an old proverb. I like to start with a proverb. There's an old proverb that says, a cheerful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. And sometimes we hear this shortened to laughter is the best medicine. And so I heard a funny story about Mr. Rogers, who you may have heard of, was a children's television host and had a program called Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood for more than 30 years. And once he went to a dinner party, there's a story that says once he went to a dinner party with a friend of his one evening, and they were sitting around the dinner table chatting, and then his friend left to go to the bathroom, and his friend's wife was in the kitchen cleaning up after dinner, and his friend came back from the restroom, and Mr. Rogers was gone. He said, "Where did Fred go?" And she said, "Oh, I don't know. He may be in there with the kids." And then he went into the living room, and Mr. Fred Rogers was sitting on the floor playing with the kids. And his buddy said, "Fred, you're off duty tonight. You don't have to be in here with the kids. You can come in here with the adults and sit down at the table." And Mr. Rogers said, "Oh, I much prefer children to adults." So today our schedule is going to be just this one presentation to give you kind of a preview of what a research proposal presentation might look like, and especially on this very relevant topic of the 5 love languages. This has been Samantha's research interest. So I'm going to turn it over to Sam now, so she will be able to share her screen with you.
It says it's disabled.
Okay, let me just click multiple participants can share.
Oh, got it. Let's see here.
And Sam has created her research proposal using a program called Prezi. So it may look a little bit different than what you're used to on PowerPoint.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My research proposal was on the impact of the 5 love languages workshop on marital satisfaction, and it was a pre-post test design. So a little bit about it. Gary Chapman developed the 5 love languages in his book, The 5 Love Languages, The Secret to Love That Lasts. In it, he kind of discovered that people like to express and receive love in 5 different ways. Words of affirmation, acts of service, which could be like doing the laundry, taking out the trash, kind of more of a cleaning type thing, receiving gifts, quality time, and physical touch. His book actually ended up selling over 10 million copies. However, there's actually very little to no empirical evidence that it actually enhances well-being. Now, Chapman did work with couples for over 35 years. Through observation, he discovered these languages, but we haven't actually really put them into practice. So my proposal is to explore these 5 love languages and see if they can predict marital satisfaction. As I stated, it is a pre-post test design, and it will be implemented through a workshop, the Enhance Your Connection Through the 5 Love Languages workshop. And in order to measure if marital satisfaction increased, we will be using the Marital Satisfaction Inventory Revised, the MSIR. So to fill the gap, I looked at some research. There was not a lot. I would just like to state before going forward, this was the only relevant article I could find in the last 5 years. All of my other ones are over 5 years, which is why I ended up using Bland and McQueen. So what we found was that the gap is 4th. Unlike some of the extant love language studies, this study focused only on participants' reports regarding how they prefer to receive affection without exploring how they tend to express affection. To overcome the methodological limitations of the extended studies, Further multivariate research could be conducted with the instruments used in this study to further assess the relationship between how love languages are valued by one partner and expressed by the other. And that was by Bland and McQueen in 2018. So my research question then is there a statistically significant difference in marital satisfaction as measured by the MSIR between couples with congruent expression in partner valuing as compared to couples with incongruent expression in partner valuing? So essentially, I want to see if couples who take this workshop, who have congruent love languages, come in, and if their marital satisfaction is going to increase 6 months after we follow up with the workshop, as compared to those who might have different love languages. My hypothesis is it's hypothesized that there will be a statistically significant difference in the MSIR of couples who have congruent love languages after completing the EYC5LL as compared to couples who have incongruent love languages. The null hypothesis would be the opposite, so there would be no statistically significant differences in the MSIR of couples who have congruent love languages after completing the EYC5LL as compared to couples who have incongruent love languages. So when looking at our literature review, as I mentioned, a lot of this is going to be kind of out of date, but unfortunately, we don't have a lot of empirical evidence on the 5 love languages. So one study that I found was by Egbert and Polk in 2006, and they found that their measure of individual participants' preferences for expressing affection using the love languages did have acceptable reliability, and it was ranging from a Cronbach's alpha of 0.77 to 0.85. They also they found a bivariate correlation in all but one combination of the love languages and established measure of relational maintenance behaviors that are enacted to preserve the relationship. So they concluded, oh no, sorry. Okay, they concluded that the love languages could be regarded as a concrete means by which individuals convey the intentions of the more abstract relational maintenance factors. Another study by Goff, et al. In 2007 did find internal consistency and reliability, a Cronbach's alpha of 0.84 to 0.92 on participants' preferences for receiving affection. And then there was a study by Veal, which was a dissertation that examined whether the knowledge of one's love language was going to inspire behavior change that would result in the other feeling more love. Now, unfortunately, the results were not significant, but it should be noted it was only within a 2-week period. And so Chapman, in his book in 2010, states that love languages must be learned, and it's going to take time to actually see a significant change in one partner's behavior, especially if there are incongruent love languages between the two. So in order to kind of tie all this in, I looked at Gottman's work that has been empirically studied and relevant for couples over the last 20 plus years. So Gottman actually did a 14-year longitudinal analysis to discover what causes divorce in couples, and he found 2 patterns of affect regulation. One was emotionally inexpressive pattern that is low in both negative and positive affect. Another was emotionally volatile attack defend pattern. So Gottman, a lot of Gottman's work was done in what he called his love lab. And in his love lab, he found that there were 6 predictors of divorce. There was a harsh startup, the way the marriage begins, the 4 horsemen, criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling, flooding, partner's negativity leaves the other feeling shell-shocked, body language, failed repair attempts, the pattern following a disagreement, and bad memories, recalling tough times. So Gottman and Kirchhoff in 1998 actually conducted another 2 longitudinal studies of marital interaction to see how couples resolved a high conflict issue. And the study actually found that disagreement and anger exchanges typically related to unhappiness and negative interaction, which could be predictive of improvement in marital satisfaction longitudinally. So if they saw these disagreements, there was opportunity to repair the marriage. However, if there was interaction patterns between the two that were defensive in nature, stubborn, or withdrawn from interaction, dysfunction in the marriage predicted longitudinal deterioration, meaning odds of them divorcing were much higher. And then Babcock et al., which he worked with Gottman in this, they ran a brief psychoeducational couple study in 2013, and it was called the workshop was called The Art of Science and Love. And they worked with 80 distressed couples who were randomly assigned to one of four conditions: friendship enhancement alone, conflict management alone, combined friendship enhancement plus conflict management, or bibliotherapy. The three outcomes assessed were relationship satisfaction, friendship quality, and destructive conflict at pre, post, and 1 year following the intervention. What they actually found was all conditions led to increased marital satisfaction and decreased problems with friendship and destruction conflict after the 1 year follow-up. So the results suggest that combined conditions can produce the greatest changes in marital satisfaction and the greatest decreases in problems in friendship and conflict. Actually, they found it particularly in men, which is kind of interesting. Come on, buddy. So to tie all this together with marital satisfaction and the five love languages, a dissertation by Thatcher in 2005 found marital satisfaction was not statistically different at the 0.5 level among individuals with different love languages or among those with a line versus those not with a line. Again, this study was not longitudinal, it was short, so I think that has a lot to play into it. I mentioned Veal earlier. Veal stated, given the impact of communication of marital interaction and the ability for the love language profile to effectively identify love expression category membership, according to the research participants, there should be further examination of Chapman's love language identification and its capacity to influence behavior and perception between couples, and it should be pursued in further research. Veal also suggested doing an educational program, which includes Chapman's love expression strategies and his larger enrichment program to produce viable options for couples whose goals are to establish reciprocal, constructive, and effective communication patterns. Sorry, it's kind of being slow with me here. So our methods. In my methods, I did participants from a convenient sample. It was 100 participants, so it was 100 couples, 200 participants. And they were 130 of them were Caucasian, 50 were African American, 10 were Asian American, and then 10 described themselves as other. I did get these participants from a convenient sample of a multivariate church. Their ages ranged from 20 years to 65, and most couples were in the first 5 years of their marriage, whereas the rest had been married for at least 10 years. So my measures, I ended up using, it should be noted that Bland and McQueen did use the RKMSS, which is the Revised Kansas Marital Satisfaction Survey. They didn't find any, in their study, they didn't find any significance in distressed couples. And they said that the measure wasn't, they would have rather choose a different measure. So I chose the marital satisfaction inventory revised because it is a multidimensional self-report measure of relationship satisfaction with over 25 years of empirical and clinical study to support its reliability, validity, and utility in assessing and treating distressed couples. It actually possesses high levels of both internal consistency and temporal stability, with a Cronbach alpha coefficient of internal consistency ranging from 0.70 to 0.93. The test retest reliability analysis over a 6-week interval of a sample of 120 respondents yielded stability coefficients ranging from 0.74 to 0.88, and the discriminant validity yielded large effect sample sizes ranging from 0.43 to 0.235. So after knowing all this and knowing that the study is reliable and valid, I also chose it because it's just a more in-depth measure. So it actually measures across 13 profile scales, which include inconsistency, conventionalization, gullible distress, affect communication, problem-solving communication, aggression, time together, disagreement about finances, sexual dissatisfaction, role orientation, family history of distress, dissatisfaction with children, and conflict over child rearing. So this measure is 150 true and false items. It has 2 validity scales, a global distress scale, 10 additional scales that assess specific areas of relationship distress. And then the scores ranged from 0 to 14. Higher scores indicated greater possibility of taking divorce action. This measure is also quick and simple, 25 minutes to complete. That's why they revised it, because they thought that the older version was taking too much time. To show you just a quick sample of some of the questions. If it comes up, come on. There we go. So as you can see, this is just an example of the original and the revised. If you see the R beside it, that is the revised questions. And then beside it, you can see the true and the false. So my design was a hypothesis of difference. It was a pre-post test design. There were 2 independent groups, couples with congruent love languages and couples with incongruent love languages. There was a 6-month follow-up where I had them take the MSIR revised. And I also, I want to contact Veal, because Veal actually ended up doing a love language self-report survey to send out to the couples after the fact, just to see if the couples believe that learning and knowing the love languages did actually help their relationship. And then my procedures. So as I mentioned, they were the participants were from a convenient sample of a multi-site Christian church, and this was through online ads, emails, and word of mouth. The workshop will be a 2-day, 8-hour psychoeducational workshop, and this assessments will be sent out 2 weeks prior to the workshop so that the clinicians can have time to review and interpret and assess the results. Essentially during these 2 days, what I want to do is provide knowledge on the 5 love languages, Gary Chapman's work, effective communication skills, and then the current research on marital satisfaction and the divorce rates. There will be the 6-month follow-up via email, and then this is to compare pre and post test results using the independent t-test to measure marital satisfaction between couples who have congruent love languages and incongruent love languages. So my results, hopefully, would be to test the hypothesis using the independent samples t-test, and it would be run through SPSS, comparing the 2 independent groups. If the p-value is less than 0.5, the null hypothesis is rejected, meaning that couples with congruent love languages will have increased marital satisfaction after the EYC5LL workshop. And then this can help to provide empirical evidence of Chapman's love languages, that it does significantly impact couples' relationship well-being, and we can continue to further explore it in counseling research. Finally, my discussion. So just some strengths of this proposal would be that it is comparing couples with congruent and incongruent love languages, which to this date, doesn't seem that it's really been empirically studied. I believe it is a strength by utilizing the MSIR, just because it is a more thorough and reliable and consistent measure. I think allowing the 6-month follow-up, it gives it enough time that the couples can have time for their behavior to change. Some limitations would be that the sample population is on the smaller side, and it is also through a multivariate church. So, you know, maybe having a really religious worldview might affect how these participants are responding and reacting. So it would be better to have a more diverse population and possibly more of a population within the general population to kind of just better gauge couples. Another limitation is the cost of the MSIR kit. It is kind of expensive, unfortunately. So if you are able to apply for a grant, I would suggest that, as am I. further research, future research could suggest doing more longitudinal studies on the 5 love languages, just because there's not nearly enough. Another future research could be looking at different cultures. Chapman, I believe, has his book um, interpreted in multiple languages, but again, we're not really looking at how this affects different cultures and how cultures may respond differently when it comes to expression and receiving of love languages. Something else that I would, love to study as well. We are looking in this study at congruent and incongruent love languages. It'd be interesting to only study couples with congruent love languages over a longitudinal time span and do this workshop and see if it increases it, and then do another study only with couples with incongruent love languages and see if that increases marital satisfaction, because it may be that we don't find anything significant because we're comparing two separate groups, whereas maybe if we only compared congruent love languages, we might see a difference, a statistically significant difference. And that is my research proposal. Do we have any questions and comments for me?
Yes, yes, we do. All right, thank you very much, Sam. I really enjoyed hearing your research proposal presentation on the 5 love languages. It's a really interesting topic. A lot of times we hear people talk about what their love language is. Is it acts of service? Is it gifts? Is it physical touch? But then you mentioned there's not as much empirical support behind the 5 love languages in terms of actual like research studies investigating um, the the uh, the the whole model. So, what do you think has popularized this concept so much that people have seemed to resonate with it to such a high degree, even though it's not necessarily supported by research?
I would say a couple things. Probably first and foremost, just quick access to the quiz. You just go to the 5languages.com and you can take the quiz. And it takes about 10 to 15 minutes, maybe not even, just 10 minutes. And, I think a lot of people resonate with it because even though it will show you your primary love language, it still shows you a percentage of how those other love languages are, how you prefer to receive the love in them. And so I think a lot of people just resonate with that because they'll take it and maybe not have no idea or knowledge of the love languages. And when they, discover, oh, physical touch, it's almost like they think about their past behaviors and they're like, oh, that's true. Like, I do like when my partner, holds my hand or, gives me a hug. So I think it's a lot to do with, maybe there's no empirical evidence of it, but people do believe that it is true to what their behavior and expression is.
Makes sense. So it sounds like what we'd say in from a psychometric perspective that the assessment itself has face validity. In other words, it appears to measure what it sets out to measure, um, and people can easily be able to find out more about themselves and then have a way to describe the way they experience love.
Yeah.
Um, and Sam, you also mentioned, future research could explore the distinct groups of couples who speak the same, have congruent love languages. So, in other words, it sounds like if one partner receives love through acts of service, and their partner likes to give love through acts of service, then they would have congruent love languages. Um, Okay, so if you were doing a separate workshop for couples with congruent love languages versus couples with incongruent love languages, what might you change, or how might you set up these workshops differently to support the needs of couples who are already speaking the same love language versus couples who maybe they have like one person likes to give words, they like to give compliments and express their love that way, and the other person really prefers them to show it through acts of service. And so they have a bit of a disconnect versus those who already kind of just naturally speak the same language. How might you make those workshops different for each of them?
I think when looking at the congruent couples, it may not necessarily be training them on what their love language is, because they're already expressing that, and receiving that. It'd be more so on just effective communication skills and patterns, and then having them practice it out, and then doing the follow up just to see that they are, maybe if there is no increase, that shows that they're already doing it, so maybe they're not distressed, so maybe that workshop wouldn't target, maybe it's communication skills they struggle on. So um I think it might be a little more difficult with congruent couples. So that is a great question. I would have to think more on that one. But as if we compare it to the incongruent um, couples, that's going to be more so. The workshop is obviously going to focus a lot more on Chapman's love languages, and um, how one partner wants to receive the love language as compared to the other partner, so that we can kind of get them on the same page. Maybe not necessarily on the same page, but at least expressing that love, their partner's love language, so that it can increase their marital satisfaction and communication skills.
Okay, so it sounds like you would really try to help them move to a place of agreement where they're able to kind of speak their partner's love language or be sensitive to what that is, and make an extra effort to shift their methods of expression. And those that already speak that language, they wouldn't necessarily need as much support in that way.
Yes.
Okay, and that would be interesting to really see how that helps. And I appreciate your research question being non-directional in terms of, is there a statistically significant difference versus statistically significant increase? Because of course there is that possibility that increasing awareness may not necessarily lead to increased satisfaction.
Yeah.
Um, that it may take more. And I appreciate your focus on a longitudinal study and your suggestions for future research to kind of follow up with them over the years to see um, what the impact is across time. Sam, as you did this literature, and I know you said, you know, uh, the Love Languages book by Chapman came out in, was it 2010?
It came out. There's this is kind of a, I guess, more updated version. So it came out before then as well, but I think his 2010 is the most popularized.
Most popularized. Okay. So it's still been, we're here in 2021, so it's been about 11 years since that came out. And you said you only really found one gap statement or journal article in the past 5 years. So it was kind of challenging to find current research. And so, but you did look at some of the existent research from the past. So out of the research that you reviewed, what are maybe some of the most interesting things that stood out to you about, learning about the five love languages and the research that's been done on them?
I think probably for me was more so just seeing what was out there, just because there wasn't a lot. Um, I liked the dissertations a lot just because it was them actually seeing if, it was empirically evident, if there was empirical evidence behind it. But unfortunately, both dissertations, I think, were just short in nature. So there was no statistically significant difference in, couples learning about love languages and whatnot. However, what I did like the most was Veal, in Veal's dissertation in 2006. Veal sent out that survey I talked about, and I believe she sent out the survey 2 weeks afterwards, I want to say. And it was just, asking, did discovering your partner's love language help you, and whatnot? And do you believe that learning love languages can help increase marital satisfaction? And it was just a Likert scale of, strongly agree to strongly disagree. Um, but Veal found that the couples did respond positively to it. So they do like learning about their love languages, and they do believe that it can help increase communication and marital satisfaction. We just don't have empirical evidence on it. So it gets me interested because I do want to know if this is, valid and reliable.
Yes, it's one of the interesting things that happens when we're doing research, right? Sometimes we just develop more and more questions.
Yeah.
Uh, we realize how much more there is to know, even the more we learn and know. And it also does make me wonder, as you're talking about, suggestions for future research and Veal's follow-up survey. Uh, the thought that I had is, wouldn't it be interesting to do a mixed method study? I know that's beyond the scope of the research proposal requirements for the research class, but to do a mixed method study and to also interview participants and to find out, perhaps the benefits that they gain don't show up on a marital satisfaction survey, but maybe there's other intrinsic benefits that they experience personally that they might talk about and share, like they learned something new about their spouse, or they realized, they had a great insight and that helped them. So it'd be interesting to see what might come out on the interview. I wonder if you have any thoughts about what an interview might reveal that wouldn't be revealed in the other quantitative assessments.
I think an interview would be a great addition, just to see, because you might come across a couple where, maybe the wife absolutely loves it and, really hopes that this is going to change their relationship. But then you interview the husband and he's like, oh, well, this is kind of dumb. I'm not going to do anything or not going to change. So I think it would just be kind of interesting to see between couples how the two are perceiving the love languages, because it could be completely different, or maybe it is beneficial and it's helping both of them. Again, I think it really is going to depend on each couple. It's going to be different for everybody.
All right. Well, thank you, Sam. I really enjoyed your presentation on the impact of five love languages workshop on marital satisfaction, pre-test, post-test design. Are there any closing thoughts that you would like to share before we end today?
Um, I cannot think of anything at this time. I did forget to show my references, but they're there.
Thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
definitely great to see Gottman's work. And, he's got a lot of empirical support for many of the interventions used. And the way you connected the dots there, I could see that being a powerful workshop using principles from Dr. Gottman's work on communications, conflict resolution, and together with the five love languages, create a unique kind of workshop. And maybe this even gets people interested in knowing what their love languages are, and just hearing about your proposal. So maybe it will spark people to go. What was the website you mentioned where they can go and uh,
It
take
is.
that test?
It's just the fivelovelanguages.com.
So maybe people will go and check that out and
Yeah.
learn about themselves. And uh, Sam, if you do wind up implementing this workshop, I think it'll be a great resource for the community and the multi site church that you mentioned. I think a lot of people could benefit. So thank you for sharing this with us and taking the time. I just want to take a moment, if that's okay, to just say a small prayer of blessing, benediction over you as we end today. So, Father, I just thank you for Sam, for all the work she's put into this wonderful workshop, Lord. And I just pray that you would bless her efforts, and that others would be blessed as they listen to her research proposal, and that they would gain insights and be encouraged. And Lord, I pray that you would just encourage Sam as she continues on in her studies, and hold her close to you, and just help her to really be able to enjoy what she's learned, and have opportunities to apply it throughout her work. And I thank you for all these things in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, Sam, thank you again for this presentation. And we will be stopping the recording now.